I like that it looks like I'm in a void right now, by the way.
Yeah,
It really
just
does.
slowly fading into the darkness.
I love it.
Michael watched Lil Nas' video one too many times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in hell. Hi, you guys. I'm recording this podcast from hell.
Great.
That's why your audio's so good.
Welcome to Bible Boys, a podcast where two ex-evangelical siblings and an ex-Catholic non-sibling watch Christian media and either praise or condemn it. I'm Aaron.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Michael.
And this week, we take a field trip to the pearly gates as we read the 2010 novel Heaven is for Real. Before we project our ideologies onto a 4-year-old, please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, like and comment on this video, and follow us on Twitter at @TheBibleBoys. Okay, so let's give our listeners some context. A couple weeks ago, we were like, you know what would be fun? We should do a book club. And we put a poll out on Twitter, and I was like, hey, if we did a book club, which book should we read? I believe I don't even remember what book I offered Golfing with God, a book about a man who goes to heaven and gets horny for God. Michael, what was yours?
Mine was Michelle Remembers, which I didn't realize an amazing podcast already covers that. You're Wrong About covers that. Go listen to them. They already did what I want to do. Great. Okay,
excellent. And then Josh, this is your fault.
Yeah. I do think this book, I think, got more emotion out of me than a book has gotten in a long time. So, I think I'm happy with my pick.
So I do love that you're always on record for hating your own pick more than anyone else on the podcast.
Well, again, this was the audience pick.
No.
The audience...
No, this is still your pick. You blame the audience for a lot.
I blame the audience for everything. You guys should not be listening.
You should all be listening.
We love all of you, and I'm surprised that you are listening to this completely unrelatable podcast, but thank you for doing it. God, maybe it's just because it is Good Friday, and I have been in my feelings about religion and the Catholicism lately, but I gave this book a very generous read, and I don't know that we necessarily need to recap the plot unless one of you is very adamant about it, and we can, in the spirit of, the fact that we're coming up on our podcast anniversary, take an approach like we did to the God's Not Dead first movie, which is just sort of talk about the themes and weird things that happen in this book. Because what happens in this book is fairly simple. The first, third to a half of it details the story of Colton Burpo, who was 4 years old at the time of this book's writing, and his dad Todd Burpo is this pastor, and Colton gets a nasty case of appendicitis and unfortunately nearly dies, and after he thankfully recovers, he begins to talk about how he went to heaven and all the things he saw there. And the rest of the book is just Todd Burpo asking Colton, about these things that he saw. And that's really it.
Yeah, this is not a plot-heavy book, and it's told in very short chapters that cover little anecdotes.
Very short chapters.
I think I'm probably not wrong in saying we all read this book today, even though we planned on reading it a month ago.
Well, this is a 35-minute read.
It blazes by.
I'm just so used to history book reading. Anyone who's taken any history class knows where you skim the entire chapter and read really hard the first and last chapter, or first and last paragraph. And I did that, and I realized I was done in literally 20 minutes and went back.
You realized you read the whole book cover to cover normally, yeah.
Yeah, and then I was like, oh, I didn't miss anything. That was it. Audience, you need to understand that in our little group chat where we talk about what we're going to talk about, I came in very hot and said, boy, howdy, am I ready to really fucking dig into some of this stuff? And I'm ready for the roast sesh, and I got a very lukewarm to cold response.
Surprise, surprise. I was the one giving the lukewarm response.
I mean, to be fair, like I said, it's Good Friday, and I've been listening to Good Friday hymns today because I hate myself.
So Aaron has rejoined the church.
Yeah.
The makeup of this podcast is about to change dramatically.
Man, the Pope said, fuck gay people, and Aaron said, maybe they got some valid points.
I actually wrote an essay about why that's not true. You can find that at aavoight.com, but don't worry about that right now.
It's a very good essay.
It's incredible, and you should read it.
Anyway, Josh, why don't you... Let's just go into those feelings. What sparked such an emotional response from you?
Well, the first one is this book could also be called Why the American Health System is Completely and Utterly Shattered. And also, fuck doctors. There's an entire... The plot of this was almost how these doctors were so fucking dumb. These dumb idiot medical professionals. These fucking dum-dums didn't know my kid had appendicitis when I told them he had appendicitis. I took my kid to the doctor and I said he's got appendicitis. The doctor said no. Fucking dummy.
I hate to be the one who's opposing you, Josh, but if you tell your doctor, please check for appendicitis, and they don't do it, or they do it bad, and it turns out that your kid does have appendicitis, you should sue the fuck out of them.
This is the only point I fully agree. The amount of doctors that have just said no, and then did a completely different test because they ignore people. Very frustrating. But it was so infuriating that they were like, man, the cost is so expensive. But you know what's going to help us out? God. God will help fix this very broken system. And we won't have to worry about money because God got our back. So we don't need to worry about changing the institution. I don't know how anyone reads this book and thinks the medical system's working.
Wow, you and I feel like we read a little bit of a different book because... yes, absolutely.
I was so scared.
This book is a huge... this book is an indictment of the medical system, but all of these stories always are, right? But I think this is a really human story at its core, where we're literally reading a family process trauma. That's what we're reading.
For the first couple chapters.
No, I think for the whole thing. I think truly, this is a psychological response to trauma. This family went through a lot and a lot of financial hardship and came out on the other side and are looking for a way to explain it. So they explained it with the tools available to them.
I think this is a story about a kid who went through some rough stuff, and then his dad went cha-cha-cha-ching.
Oh, I actually don't disagree with that. I just don't look at it necessarily as inherently the wrong thing or something that I wouldn't do.
So we do need to stress recently in 2015 the kid Colton and his mother came out and said that the story is incorrect. It's something he made up, and the lie.
That's not true. We had to double check that because I thought that was the case. It was it's actually a worse story. There's a different person who had a similar story, except they're a quadriplegic, and it turned out their dad did make up the whole story and then took all the money from them.
That must have been the one I was reading about.
Yes.
Oh my god.
It was not this story.
That's a very similar story.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And I looked up that because I was like, yeah, I can't, because halfway through this book, I was like, I have to look up because this dad is making these really bald-faced lies and I hate him for it. And then it turns out it was a different story. And I was like, okay, that makes me read this in a much more generous light. But I do think you're right. I do think there is definitely a reading where you can be like, this guy saw an opportunity to make money and he took it. And I mean, I'll be the first to say, I wouldn't necessarily not do that. Okay. I feel like it might be too early to give our theories about what really happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's also very early in the podcast for Empathize with Todd minute, but here we
so
are.
We need to talk about what happened. So Colton would just every once in a while just drop some fucking real heaters and be like, hey dad, I saw your dad in heaven. I went to heaven. I died. Like kids do. And I'm not being flippant. Kids will just say shit like that. My little cousin once told me that her grandmother in the clouds had rainbow cats, which is almost what happened in this book.
Yes. Okay. There will be a Let's Defend Todd moment from me, unfortunately. Let's set up why that's a stupid thing to do. Chapter 1, Todd Burpo makes it clear that Colton doesn't like Barbies and loves steak. And later on, when he is told that he might have breast cancer, complains that getting a lumpectomy isn't the manliest surgery. Mm-hmm. So, like, this guy's got some hang-ups.
Yeah, like, there's a lot there. And I also think something that's really super important for us to lead with here is that the co-author of this book ghost wrote Sarah Palin's book. So we should operate from that place of this is like who we're dealing with here.
Colton's been on Hannity. Like, yeah.
Have you guys did you guys write down quotes from this book? Because I couldn't help but to do that.
Of course, Josh.
Yeah.
So one line really stuck out from the beginning part where he says, "Now as a pastor, I'm not a believer in the superstitious." Yeah, you fucking are. That's your whole deal.
Yeah, it's your job, dude.
That's your whole thing.
Christians really need to be cool with, like, accepting other people's weird beliefs. Like, there is no difference between, believing that there is a, if you pray every night, good things will happen to you. And, like, also if you break a mirror, bad things will happen to you. It's both just, like, kind of, a superstition. I mean, just because one has been institutionalized and one is not, they're still coming from the same place.
This is a bit early to bring this up, but he does say, "Now as a pastor," at least 3 times in this book.
Yeah, again, this woman who helped him write this book ghost wrote for Sarah Palin, so not exactly like a titan of literature here, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, let's not pretend this is the writing of the century here.
It's bad. I mean, I don't know, right? I want to be very careful when we criticize writing, but it is very simple and often repetitive. There's not a whole lot of great flourishes, and that's okay. But the writing's not incredible. It's not going to win a fucking Hugo anytime soon.
Well, because the point is the point of this book is for it to reaffirm your beliefs. Yes, the point of this book is to pick up, any human being can pick up, and any time where they're like, oh, I knew I'm a Christian, of course, I don't have any doubts. And I don't have any doubts because I read Heaven is for Real, so, like, that backed me up.
Well, and that's actually textually the point of this, right? Like, there's a story, an anecdote of the babysitter literally saying that, where when Colton talks about his sister who is in the book, where we get another misogynistic moment, but not outside of the realm of evangelical misogynism, he meets his sister who was miscarried around 2 months old and says it to a babysitter who's like freaking out, as of course one does. And she just says, hey, this reaffirmed my faith. I think of Colton crying over missing his sister every time. And it's like, I don't know. I have a lot of opinions about where this comes from in humanity, and I think this could be handled so much better.
Let's talk about the fucking miscarried sibling plot point, which is a sentence I wish I didn't have to say. But here we are. Like Michael said, right, unfortunately, the Burpos, Todd and Sonia, I believe is her name, they had a miscarriage after their first child was born, and it was very hard for them, and they talk about struggling with that spiritually and emotionally, and miscarriages happen in about 1 of every 3 situations when a woman gets pregnant. They are very common, and that I feel like we should really talk about them more as a society, as a medical professional. I think we should probably make it more known that miscarriages are very common, and that's not to diminish anyone's personal or emotional pain from having them, because it is very hard. You build up a lot of expectations and hopes for a child that doesn't come to be, and I do have a great deal of sympathy for that. The fact that Todd Burpo made it a point to put in this book that he sold and later turned into a movie is fucking despicable.
Let your anger feed you.
See, here's the thing. It is re-traumatizing his family over again for the sake of a story. And I wonder if anyone involved recognizes that. Like, I don't know. I could see this family kind of being like, well, yeah, that's part of our story, and not even thinking of it that way, right? Because I'm operating from the place of, I don't know whether or not these people like fully believe in what they're saying or not. So I'm going to take it at face value and say, yes, I do, until I'm presented with alternative information. So maybe they do have some levity about it and some relief of, oh yeah, our daughter's in heaven. This is no longer traumatic for us. We will see her again. We know this.
But I feel like we're kind of missing the big elephant in the room, and I hate that this is the sentence I chose to pick, and that's abortion, where this just feels so clearly like, look at all of those babies you're killing. Like, I couldn't not read it that way.
That's completely fair. Yeah, I didn't think about it when I was reading like that, but I mean, you're completely right. This is, they don't bring up politics ever in the book, but you can, I mean, they're from Nebraska. They're from Imperial, Nebraska, which is a small town, and he's a pastor. Again, they've been on Megyn Kelly. Like, they have an agenda, and we can't not, we can't ignore that.
They don't draw the line, but it is a single line to draw. Like, it's a very, yeah. They don't do it themselves, but I think there's more than enough information for that line to be there.
It's a completely fair read-in, but I think, Michael, I think to your credit, if we are taking them at face value, I think it's super gross to talk about, a very personal thing like a miscarriage and a thing that you're selling. But also, I think that if we are reading it as like something that they do believe happened, then, it does make sense. If that's what's so complicated about this book, right, is that if you don't read it from a completely, they just made it all up view, they make some choices that are hard to reckon with, like the fact that they talk about this very hard thing that happened to them, and like it also very much makes sense for an evangelical family to be like, I am very relieved because I am very concerned about the soul of somebody who wasn't ever even born, because that's what I've been taught to believe, and that's my faith. And the fact that you were there are these details when they talk about her, how like Colton allegedly says that this unborn child has hair like her mom, and like that, I don't think you put that in a book unless you genuinely do have some sort of belief in that, in its power and its truth, which is it's very difficult. But then they also go and they have like a running joke, Todd and Sonia, which is like, I'm going to get to heaven and I'm going to name her first, which is like.
And so maybe this is coloring my viewpoint here, but this just kind of sounds like how a lot of the evangelicals I grew up around talk.
For sure.
Like, there's a race to death. And like, actually they talk about that in this book, where Colton as a young child develops a like very flip sense of his own security.
He does the saved bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Where he's like, it's okay if I die because I'm going to heaven. And I think that that is something that is not uncommon in evangelical circles and seems jarring to the general public. Like, I read that and didn't think twice about it, because I think even as a young person in evangelical circles, you're like, whatever, dude, I'm going to heaven. Who cares?
Do you guys mind if I just explain the major thing of what pissed me off about this?
Please.
Oh, not at all.
It was nothing. This was nothing. There was no meat in this. There was a sad thing happened. A child said some vague things. Book. And I feel like if you remove the Christianity angle from it, like if you just change a couple names, then everyone's like, what the fuck, that kid was talking about some wonky shit. And that's it. And it just pisses me off that you can just throw a nothing story. Like, there's no meat. None of the things every time this fucking dad would ask the kid a question, he'd be like, what did Jesus look like? And the kid would be like, he had brown hair and a beard. It's like, and the guy was like, how did he know that? Whoa! He knew Jesus had marks on his hand? What? I'm like, this is nothing. It was just a nothing sandwich with the Christianity paint on it.
So I understand that, but I, as a skeptic, walked into this of, okay, I am not a person of faith reading this, so I'm not going to believe textually this story. So instead I decided, let's read this about like this family story and try to glean as much as we could from that. And that's when I started, I'm not going to say it's like my favorite book or even one that I necessarily enjoyed all that much, but I think that gives me a little bit more softness to it than you have, is because I'm just taking it in as this is a family processing their trauma that they found a way to monetize, and likely at a point in their life like where they needed help with bills, help in catching up on expenses from our broken medical system. Like their church offered them something, but it wasn't all that much. Like, I think there's just like a really human story under all of this.
But I think, Michael, this is, to your credit, you are adding a lot to this that wasn't there. And I think you're doing this because you are giving these people, like, the benefit of the doubt. Because through most of the story, the grief processing isn't happening. Most of the story is just, like, conversations, a couple things happen, and, like, you are right. Like, the idea of a family struggling with, like, faith in any way, or struggling through financial, like, challenges, all of that is taken care of in the first, like, fucking 20 pages of this book. They get the financials settled in no time. The dude's crisis of faith is, like, literally, like, 1 page, and that's it. I didn't feel like there was anything there.
So, to your credit, Josh, you're right. The narrative tension in this book is slack, to say the least. Like, the most tense parts of the book are in the beginning, where it's unclear whether or not Colton's going to make a recovery, even though, like, the whole premise of the book is about how he went to heaven. But, like, there is some tension there. But, like, later on, right, it really is just Todd being like, hey, Colton, tell me about heaven. And then Colton says a benign fact about heaven. And Todd's like, damn, how'd that kid know that? He can't even read yet. And and it's boring. But I also want to give Michael's thoughts credit, because like we said before, this book's purpose was not it wasn't written in order to help show that they were actually processing trauma. It was written to monetize something and reinforce an ideology. Like, I think that if we read the sequel, Heaven is for real, or God is for real, and Heaven changes everything. There's 2 sequel books. God
damn it, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I think we might actually get some more of, like, the trauma processing, because there was so little in this book that I have to imagine they include some more of Sonia's point of view.
Oh God, I hope. She's like such a more interesting, compelling person.
Oh, for sure. Todd is extremely bland.
Can we now talk about Jesus' gay horse?
What?
I was hoping that we would get to Jesus, because I want to talk about Jesus Christ himself.
Yeah, let's talk about Jesus and what Colton saw in heaven. Josh, do you want to talk about the gay horse?
Yeah, so at some point Colton's like, hey, Dad, Jesus got a horse? And Todd's like, really? What's this horse look like? And Colton's like, it looks like a rainbow. And I got it here. Yeah, a rainbow horse. I got to pet him. There's lots of colors. Lots of colors? What was he talking about? Where are there lots of colors, Colton? And I didn't copy anything more because I didn't find the response any bit interesting.
No. That's how a lot of the book is.
That's the last we hear of this rainbow horse.
Doesn't all come up again now.
Well, also we get a little sprinkle of Satan, but we can't touch that any further because we don't want to re-traumatize Colton with that, but we're comfortable re-traumatizing him astral projecting, watching the doctors take care of him.
God.
That is where every bit of that and Colton being like, hey, Dad, there's a war coming? And his dad being like, really? What weapon do I get in the war? And Colton being like, you get a sword or a bow. I don't fucking remember.
Can we talk about how pervasive the patriarchy is, that the women and children watch and the men all have to go fight? Like, what the fuck is this?
You get a Super Saiyan ass reincarnated body, but because you have a uterus, you have to sit on the sidelines and cheer your man on to war against the dragons.
Well, and just from a utilitarian point of view, God, if you're listening, if any of this is real, you don't want me fighting on the front lines. Do you see me? I'm not built for combat.
Michael's more of a strategist.
Yeah.
Michael's an armchair general.
Michael's an ideas guy.
Yeah. Big ideas guy.
So this point where Colton's like, yeah, there's a war and we fight monsters. This point is the perfect example of what every conversation is like, because Todd's like, really? What monsters? He's like, I'm going to see if my kid's lying. And his kid goes, dragons and stuff. And then Todd's like, and then I remembered the scripture in Revelations
and then
that mentioned the
pulls out
dragon.
a verse from Revelations which describes demon locusts. So not even the part in Revelations about dragons.
No, he's talking about cicadas.
Which we will be going through soon. But, like, what little kid would go from monsters straight to dragons? That's what, like, every single thing is the most logical lie a little kid would come up with. Not blaming the kid. I want to stand by this. I don't blame a 4-year-old for looking at their dad and going, hey, I went to heaven, Jesus had a rainbow horse. Little kids say wild shit all the time. That's fine, I don't care. Fucking Todd didn't need to write down his kid's fan fiction.
Yeah,
but he did.
We'll revisit that when we talk about what we think actually happened.
Yes,
Michael, what is your point about Jesus Christ?
Okay, so I'm really happy that we're in a jokey part of this discussion because I was going to derail us real hard. So I'm going to drop a picture in the chat and definitely on our Twitter of this painting that is cited.
Mm-hmm. I've got it pulled up in my tabs too.
I didn't
have time to Google this.
Oh, you didn't get the version with the little inset photos?
No, I read this
God.
very illegally.
Oh, okay. You're smarter than me. I bought it on eBay.
Oh, dummy.
I did not buy it, but I will not tell where.
I'm a fucking moron.
Aaron fucking lawful good.
Spent
So I
$3
literally
on
almost
this.
sent y'all a free PDF I found on WordPress.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to drop direct in the chat what I thought the moment I saw this.
I've got a bad feeling about what this image is. This is a Golden Girls.
Jesus Christ has the same haircut as Blanche Devereaux. I did not know that Jesus Christ himself had a perm.
Okay, let's talk about...
I've killed my brother.
Let's talk about Prince of Peace, the painting by Akiana. She has a weird last name. Akiana, she's apparently like this prodigy. Akiana Kramaric. She's apparently this prodigy who was raised by an atheist family, but had visions of heaven and was able to, according to Colton Burpo, accurately depict the face of Jesus Christ. I just showed you my little picture insets. You'll notice that those little inset pictures are in black and white. So I was like, I guess that's a pretty good picture of Jesus. But when I looked up the picture on the internet in color, I was like, there is a noticeable lack of melanin in our Lord and Savior.
That's a white man.
Jesus Christ has my skin tone, and I'm perturbed by that.
He does have stunning eyes.
I mean,
Yeah, but they are green.
They are very green.
Green, like all fucking Aramaic men.
Yeah.
God.
Christ.
There's a better chance that's what the Roman dude looked like.
Yeah. It's bad. I do wish that we could, maybe one day, Josh, you'll be able to walk me through the history of why we depict Jesus as a white man, besides the fact that, white supremacy. I'd be actually very interested in listening to that history, but, this painting really doesn't do it for me.
So I think it's very well done.
It's a great painting. Listen, she's a phenomenal artist. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but, like, people with tons of talent do incorrect stuff all the time, and I don't want to say that that's not what Jesus looks like, but that's not what Jesus looks like.
I mean, at least when he was on Earth, if we're subscribing to the theory that he became a human man and walked on Earth, he probably didn't look like that just because he had to go outside all the time in the fucking sun out in Jerusalem.
If Jesus went to heaven and then became white, I'm going to cancel him on Twitter.
Yeah, that's my theory. My theory, my headcanon, is that once he ascends, he, becomes Super Saiyan and is glowing all the time, like Colton says, because he's producing the light in heaven. Because Todd tried to trip him up once with this riddle about when it gets dark in heaven, and Colton was like, "Doesn't get dark in heaven, Dad. God."
I do love that we got an insight in their dynamic, and that Colton obviously displayed more critical thinking than his father. That was something I really appreciated. Where Colton would be like, 2 + 2 always equals 4. I know this.
Colton's a smart kid. Like, a lot of the stuff he says, there's a lot of thought behind it. I am upset.
I love that you're calling him a kid because you're his age.
Oh
yeah,
my
that's why I asked if you were born in 1999. Yeah, last night. I was like, Josh. Don't worry about it. Yeah, you are the same age as Colton Burpo.
Yeah.
Oh, I went down the wrong road. My dad's a pastor too. That's why I'm angry.
Here's the thing.
But you know what? If you told our dad I went to heaven, he'd be like, "No, you didn't."
Yeah, he would straight up go, "No, you didn't." Did they look like wheels with eyes with 4 different wings? Shut up. Come back when you've done your homework.
At 4 years old, he would have been like, "Nope."
Heaven is technically 48 cubic meters wide. Our dad did an entire sermon on the biblical definition of how large heaven is.
That rules, actually. 48. That's not very big.
No, I made that number up. My dad's got the facts and figures. I'll have him send it to you.
We'll hit him up. Hit him up on Father's Day. Here's the thing about Colton Burpo. By all accounts, seems like a fine kid. I looked up his Instagram, which is publicly available. He doesn't share a whole lot on it. I mean, he's still a religious person. He is still interested in public speaking, but not necessarily preaching. I mean, he's probably a Republican, which does suck, but he's not one of those people that is posting pro-Trump propaganda, at least on social media. He could be doing a lot more damage, and for that he seems like a fine kid who is adjusted to his weird amount of fame in an okay way, and I have to be grateful for that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to be real. I watch a lot of reality TV. There are a lot of Republicans on my screen that I pretend not to see their politics, so I can do it for Colton.
Okay, so I'm fucking mad at the Angels. Because they sang to Colton. He says, "I went up there, Angels sang to me." And I have a quote here right now that says, "I asked them to sing we Will Rock You, but they wouldn't sing that." Fucking homophobic ass Angels.
Homophobic. What? They're like, did a queer person? We don't sing no gay shit up here. Absolutely not.
There is a reading of this where Angels are like, nah, we don't step on Freddy. We don't step on Freddy. We let Freddy sing that.
No, you gotta book him in advance, bro.
Yeah, he's a very busy man.
No, we don't. With that copyright? Really? He'll sue us out of wings. I just gotta blow through some fucking buck wild facts about, heaven. One, it's our same body, but we're younger. We don't age. 2, everyone has wings, except God, who just kind of floats up and down, or except Jesus, because he floats up and down like an elevator.
What would your wings look like? I spent a lot of time thinking about this.
I'm gonna go with average and unassuming.
Oh, I would try. I think I would try to slip past St. Peter and be like, "Come on, Pete, you can give me the bat wings. You can give me the cool goth kid special, right?" But I think he'd be like, No, you're gonna get the standard issue too."
I would 100% have little dragonfly wings. Just be flitting about, go real fast.
Of course you would.
I do love that in your mind they would increase your speed level too.
Yeah, because I will be the first person in eternity to be like, "Hey, can I make a request?"
And I don't want to nitpick Colton here, but my 4th heaven fact is that everyone wore white except Jesus, who had a purple sash, and except Pop, who had a blue sash. What the fuck is up?
Do we know what the significance of that is? It didn't seem like... I don't remember anything, and I didn't care enough to look it up, and it didn't seem like Todd knew anything either.
Yeah, Todd didn't defend it real well. I mean, there is a reading where like all of the saints in heaven get crowns, right? I'm sure there is some scriptural passage like that. Maybe that's some sort of weird fan fiction adaptation of that. It's just a weird detail. Well,
I fucking bet heaven's pay to win. And, like, you get up there, you get, like, a white thing, like, average wings, but fucking drop, like, your credit card at, like, $4.99. Really get those cool sandals.
Heaven's like Fortnite, wherein the skins are really the main draw.
Catch me with my dragonfly wings, bitches.
Yeah, Michael dropped a sweet $60 to get those. Just to stunt on us all.
Oh, God. One detail I liked that Colton said that was that sometimes God shoots down power at Todd while he's preaching, just to like give him a little senzu bean and power him up, which is really cute. I'm glad that Todd felt the need to put that in the book.
That was very important to add. That was because after the first 20 pages, the book fucking sucks. The first 20 pages are the only good part, in my opinion, other than the like splattering of buck wild shit Colton just drops on us.
That's the best part.
I do want to point out the second time that Todd says "as a pastor," it is "as a pastor, you sometimes find yourself on death watch." Okay.
It's really intense.
Listen, there's only like 3,000 people in his hometown. Somebody's got to do it, so it's probably him.
And then the last quote I got down was when Todd's wife, when they were looking at, like, the money problems, she was like, do we still make our tithes? And he went, absolutely. I said, God had just given us our son back. There was no way we were not going to give back to God. And it just made me think, like, you think God's going to repossess their son?
No, actually, bro, sorry.
I see you didn't make your payment. Just, like, smashes the kid's, like, femur. Don't do it again.
Real nice toddler you got here. It'd be a shame if somebody threw him into a lake of fire.
That's when the angels come down with all of their eyes and their true forms. They're like, we've come to collect your son.
I forgot to say, fucking Colton says there's so many swords in heaven that it's just fucking chock-a-block full of swords.
Heaven is for weebs.
It looks like every bi girl's dream, just sword to sword.
We're all fucking LARPing.
That is actually my heaven, so I'm glad that I really do need to get back into the church.
I did find there was something like kind of sad about the perversion of tithing that I wanted to touch on, and this is just like me maybe going a little too deep here, but if you ask me, the whole purpose of tithing is for the church to have a collective bit of fun to help people. And like obviously pay for the operations of the church, but they keep a fund to help people.
Like a charity fund.
Yes, in his situation, a tithe fund would exist, ideally, to help someone like him. So he's just paying into a pot that should be going towards helping his family pay the bills. It felt kind of dark how Christians sometimes will talk about, well, you know, if I don't pay my subscription service, God will cancel my membership. And it's like, it's really not what it means.
Yeah.
I've read the Bible a lot. That's really not what it means.
There's a whole thing about a woman who only gives like 2 pennies and like it's like a really big deal. You don't really, if you're having terrible medical bills, please just skip the fucking donation bucket this time.
Especially in a country with mega pastors who have these multi-million-dollar churches and have become so wealthy. I just think that it's sometimes a very dark message to be sending to poor people that perhaps the reason that God didn't save your son is you didn't pay enough. And like, that could be a message someone could take from this. And I think that's where we should be careful, right? Like, that's where my criticisms of Todd come in, is he's very flip about a lot of the faith-based stuff. And I think sometimes when evangelical Christians especially do that, they're not trying to be harmful, but what the message they're sending is bad things happen to you if you haven't prayed hard enough, if your faith isn't strong enough. And that's a really shitty thing to say because sometimes bad things just happen.
And I think part of... I understand that what I'm going to say is a very bad faith reading of this, and it's because I came out of this very negative towards Todd. It is very hard to see a man who now has made a bucket load of money off of this situation, and is a pastor, like going, oh, but you always pay your tithes, even though when something terrible happens and medical bills are coming up, you know who needs to get that money? God. And who's in charge of God's house? This guy.
I mean, I actually think it's way more likely he pays tithes than taxes.
Oh, he definitely doesn't pay taxes. I guarantee it. I'd put my taxes on that.
Just like my understanding of conservative evangelical culture.
I think we've probably reached the point where we can talk about our theories on what actually happened with Colton.
How do you want to go with this? Because I think mine's going to be the most negative.
I feel like we should do yours first then, and then build up to a higher, nicer place.
Okay. Yeah, because mine's rough. So I think something bad happened to this family, very clearly. I think that the kid started lying, as all children do, about imagery that he saw around him. Very simple imagery, such as what Jesus looks like, what people talk about heaven, nothing highbrow. His dad went, this confirms what I already believe, therefore it is correct. And then went, fuck, I can make a ton of money off of this. Perfect, that's what God would want, because I can spread the message this way. And I don't think if you ask this person deep down in their heart of hearts, do they believe they're doing something insidious? But they are.
I think that's fair. I don't think that's an ungenerous reading. I think when you do a podcast like ours, I think that's a completely normal perspective to have.
Yeah.
So I do kind of think maybe, Aaron, if yours is the most positive, maybe we should do yours next. Because if his was any indication, I'm going to agree with half of what both of you say.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be an interesting way to end it.
Okay. My interpretation, I absolutely believe that something bad happened to Colton. I'm sure this appendicitis thing did 100% happen. And, I think all the bad shit, like the fact that like his grandfather died in a horrible car accident, I'm sure that all happened. Like Michael was saying earlier, I think you can see that this family has absolutely been through a lot of trauma. And I think that not only, the Colton stuff, but the fact that their whole, the last couple years of their life seem to have been pretty darn hard. I do think that I did some reading on near-death experiences earlier. I think it's entirely likely that Colton had some sort of near-death experience. Now, because near-death experiences are heavily influenced by your culture, right? I think it's entirely possible he did have visions of Jesus. He's been exposed to those sort of things from a very early age. And do I think that, some of these conversations happened and Colton was just like, yeah, I guess, sure. Like, I don't know that they were exactly as specific as Todd outlines. I think that certainly there are parts of this book that are either far too specific or are just, wholesale inventions to fill page space. But I do think some of it did. I think a lot of it did happen. And, the fact that this book was published many years after the medical bills were due, I think is a point in its favor, right? I think that this book came out in 2010, so they were probably like looking for publishing contracts around 2008, and this incident happened in 2003 or 2004. So I really don't think that it is a cash grab initially. I do think that as time goes on, they realize they can make money off of it. Hey, they start transitioning. Sonia's a teacher. Todd installs garage doors. This seems like an easier way to make money. I think they just sort of fall into the line hey, this thing sort of blew up, and I think they'd be fools not to have rolled with it. They wrote several sequels to their book. They have a movie. They have their own ministry. They have Heaven is for Real Ministries now. So I think it is something that was based in reality and sort of kind of snowballed, and you know, they realized they can make a profit on it, and that's fine. And I do genuinely believe there are so many. I'm going long, but there are so many instances of like very specific and personal trauma, like the fact that he is so worried about, his grandfather, right, who he clearly loved. Todd spends a lot more detail on his grandfather than his wife, and like it's clear he was very close to his grandpa, and like the fact that he, they do bring up that very personal thing about the miscarriage. Like this family has some sincere emotional pain, and you know it sucks that they had to monetize it, but I do think that there's probably more truth in this story than there is lies. But I also think that the stuff that they are trying to make the audience believe is a little bit. It is not untinted by ideology, and that we have to be careful there.
I have bad news.
Oh no.
My opinion's going to be the nicest, and it's going to be by a lot.
Oh, no.
Oh, fuck you. Aaron's was already too nice for me.
Shit.
Christ.
Shit.
Michael's like, I believe he went to heaven and crosses himself.
I'm converted.
I'm gonna DM him on Instagram right now and figure out how he can get me one of them swords.
I want a sword, I want a sash, and I want my fucking wings. I'm sold. I'm gonna break it down. I think my opinions on this are pretty simple. So I think everything that happened in this book that happened in real life on Earth in that setting happened. Full stop. Every single detail I just believe, because there's really no reason to lie. And frankly, this is where maybe I'll get more critical. The story wasn't captivating enough to be full of falsehoods. Like, it's not these over-the-top proclamations that are trying to impress people. It's like a story of anecdotes, of like quick little quips. It doesn't feel, to me, it doesn't read like the stories of people lying about being at a war zone, or, you tend to fluff, you don't tend to deflate. So I didn't see any of that. And I personally am of the mindset that it almost doesn't matter if Colton saw this in a dream, if it was near death. Like, the subconscious mind is a very powerful thing. We know many a story of these near-death experiences, but also of incredibly vivid dreams and reactions to being put under. We don't know, like, this kid was so small when he was being put under. What if that was affecting him, right? And so because your subconscious fills in blanks with what you know, I think everything Colton said struck me as something I would have known as a young person brought up in evangelical churches. And I think what's important is that Todd tries to make the point of, oh, would months of Sunday school do this? And it's like, yeah, maybe not. But Colton has likely sat in on your sermons. He's likely heard you studying or talking. As someone whose father was a pastor, it's a lot more engaged than just one Sunday, one day a week. So I think all of that happened. And I think truthfully, this family didn't necessarily have tools beyond their faith at their disposal to process their trauma. So they leaned further on that. They thought, I have a compelling story to tell. I think the publishers heard this story and went, we have a story to sell. And so everyone did their job. I actually think that's the part that I have no judgment for, right? Like, you have a story to sell. I think the success of this could absolutely change something and all of that. But like you said, Aaron, this book was published and shopped around years after the actual medical incidents. So for me, the lie is not really a thing. I actually kind of think everyone believes the story that they're telling us. I just happen to not subscribe to that particular religion or faith pattern, so I don't believe that's what happened. I think it is how you explained something that happened.
I am gonna have to, I cannot believe 'tis I, the person, I don't know Aaron's opinions on children. I don't know how net positive or neutral you are to those little things. I like them. I think they're neat. I also think they lie every given opportunity they can. I think children lie more than they breathe. I think children were put on this earth to lie to humans. I think children's only purpose is to confuse the fuck out of their parents.
Very important delineation here. Lie versus storytell. I absolutely will buy that Colton is telling a story and following threads because he's also getting positive affirmation, right? Like when he's talking about Pop, he's getting positive affirmation. I don't think Colton is trying to intentionally mislead his dad, who, honestly, I read this and I go, I do kind of think you buy all of this.
Well, that's the thing. I think if you put everyone for a lie detector test, they would all think they are telling the truth. But I do think that this was just Colton lying, telling a story. Like, either way, I see them both the same in my mind. Like, malice or not, I don't care. Like, I don't think these people are bad people for that. I don't like Todd, but that's neither here nor there. Like, I don't blame Colton for telling a story. But, like, to me, that story is built off of fabrications because it got, like, people are like, oh, really? Tell me more. And if you tell stories and people go, oh, that's right, when you're 3, that's gonna stick with you.
I think that, I don't think that's necessarily not what Michael's saying, though. I think that Colton was 4 when he had this experience, and I don't think that there's necessarily like a difference between lying and storytelling when you're that young. You don't really have the wherewithal to lie. You just know, okay, if I say one thing, my parents are going to be okay with it, and if I say another thing, I don't know. Maybe they'll get mad at me. And I feel like that's more what happened, was that like Colton maybe, saw something and was like, yeah. And then he picked up on the fact that his parents were very enthusiastic about it and kept going. So I don't want to say lie. I feel like is a very strong word. It projects intentionality, which I don't think is what's going on here. I think Colton, just kind of went with it, and now he's old and like those are just part of his memories now. Right, that's the thing about memory, right? Even eyewitnesses, Michael, as a true crime person, you'll know this. Eyewitnesses who were at the scene of a crime can get the face of a criminal wrong just because the brain's fucked up.
Yeah, and like I it won't shock you, I had an entire section of my notes dedicated to memory. Like, if this were a dream, the reaction of the adults around him make this a memory for Colton, and a very formative one, right? Like, the hospital is a very traumatic experience, especially when you're young and you don't have a lot of tools to deal with this. So of course, this would be something. Like, I also believe that Colton to this day believes this all to be factual because it's been, those neural pathways have been retraveled so many times. And if you think of a memory like a photograph, and every time you're viewing it, you're actually pulling it out and exposing it to the sun, so you're damaging it a little bit. That's a better way of understanding memory than like a screenshot. So every time you're remembering something, you are relying more on the previous memory than the actual thing that happened. So I truly do believe like this was this family's attempt, and like probably successfully so, to process this traumatic thing and share their story of this is how we explain it.
I think the part where I get left behind in this one is solely based off of the fact that Christianity is inherently evangelical, and a lot of what was said in it, like the Colton goes to a funeral and he is like, well, he had to have Jesus in his heart. Why would any idiot would put Jesus in their heart, right, Dad? And that's where you lose me. That's where it stops being a personal story that helped me deal with grief, my truth, to this is the universal truth, and here's proof of this universal truth. That's when I'm like, all right, fuck off.
Yes, that's where I agree with you, Josh. I feel like there were some, editorializations in the ghostwriting process that maybe didn't happen.
I mean, this is where I go on my infamous "don't hate the player, hate the game." Like, this is Christianity. This is, evangelicalism. This is, structural problems, not so individual problems. And because I see it as a structural problem, not an individual problem, I'm willing to give a little more leeway, I think.
I think the reason why I don't is because I think this behavior should no longer be rewarded. This behavior should be like, that's cool that it's your truth. Stop fucking saying it's mine. That's the only issue I have with it. That's why I don't have a problem when people tell me they believe in ghosts. And it's very different when they tell me like they're religious. Like, when they're religious, my fear is, oh god, they're gonna tell me what I need to believe. But when someone tells me they believe in ghosts, a lot of it's like, here is my experience. This is the truth that I went through. And even though I don't believe in ghosts, I can still go, I understand that. I comprehend what you went through. But again, just the, like, I did have to pull up their, frequently asked questions on their ministry, and there's an entire section for abortion.
Oh, of course there is. Ah, damn it.
Of course there is.
Yeah.
So there are too many seeds of this. And I've had, I think, this conversation with you before, Michael. My issue with Christianity is you do pick and choose what shit you want to
easily
talk about. So the fact that they did decide that they're going to, like, discriminate against people that have abortions instead of like being like, man, isn't it insane all of the fucking sperm that I just waste every week? Or like,
well, especially when they textually say the Bible is very mum on abortion. They don't say that exactly because of who the ghostwriter is, but they do say that the Bible says nothing about, miscarried babies and all of that, right? So it is an admission that our textual religious document is silent on our culture war issue. Wait until they hear what the Bible says about trans athletes.
Well, I will say, Aaron, they do dunk on Catholics real quick, and they're like, of course the baby goes to heaven. It's not old enough to know any better. You don't need to baptize that motherfucker.
Do you think that Catholics think that unbaptized babies go to hell?
That's 1,000% what I was told, and yes, that is what I believe.
Holy shit! We don't say shit like that about Protestants.
You don't have to.
We don't make up mean lies. We just hate Martin Luther.
You guys, why do you baptize them then?
Because it's nice.
For fun? For fun?
Listen, I believe the Catholic position is that unbaptized infants go to limbo and probably heaven. I think. Okay, but they don't go to hell.
Okay, but they don't go to, like, it's the purgatory, right? That's where they go.
They don't go to purgatory. Purgatory is if you're like of the age of reason and like you can do sin, but you can work off your sin. It's like
that's where I'm going.
There's a fourth one?
Yeah, dude, fucking Catholicism's got tears on tears on tears. It's awesome.
Everything is numerical. There are even tears in hell.
Well, yeah, I read Dante's Inferno.
Yeah, dude.
Which this does say is not correct. Satan is trying to get into heaven, and that's why the angels have swords.
Yeah, that's fucking stupid.
I do wish we got more of Satan. I wish we got a little bit more from Satan.
Let's actually DM Colton and see what he says about Satan.
I do have a question for the group.
What you got?
Do you all believe in heaven?
No.
I do not.
Oh, I'm agnostic. I don't know.
I was at that point, but I realized that, like, I don't care. So I don't think it is. I definitely don't believe in hell.
If the Catholic Church supported gay people, I would probably believe in heaven. I would be a very different person if the Catholic Church had different social views, but they don't. So now I'm a godless atheist. Thanks. Who is the person? It was Ratzinger. Yeah, good job, Ratzinger. Fucking crushed it.
Got him.
Yeah.
God, Benedict my ass.
This
Who retires from being a pope? You can't retire from being the pope.
The young pope when he slipped into a coma.
God.
We're going to watch that one day, and I can't wait.
I felt real rage during this podcast. This book really pisses me off.
Oh, Lord.
I just have to say it's wild because it typically, like, I walk into everything such a skeptic, and I was very, like, ooh, my gut instinct was, I'm going to hate this. And I did. I didn't think it was like a well-written book or a good read. It was quick. It was short. Those are things I'm grateful for. But I legitimately was like, I'm going to be too harsh. And then when we started texting, I went, oh shit, am I going to be the nicest one? And come to find out.
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm glad that we all fell on different sides of the spectrum. I don't think we were unduly cruel, which is the important thing, because, this is a very personal story about trauma, and I think we gave it a fairly fair read.
Yeah.
So, do we have ideas for our next read?
We gotta rate this one.
Oh, God.
Yeah, we do have to rate this.
We have to, Aaron, we do the same thing every week.
Listen...
It's a very, by the books.
Okay. And, let's make this clear. Our rating is no judgment on this family or what they went through. It is just a literary
the experience
rating.
Of reading the book.
Yes.
Yes. I just want that to be so clear
Thank
my,
Michael.
dark black void.
That does.
It looks like...
Your eyes are glowing currently.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I can see the pole coming up from behind Michael.
Yeah.
Satan's gonna die soon.
Uh-huh. You in danger, girl.
Alright, I got my rating.
Alright, let's hear it.
I'm gonna give it 1 religion is the opium of the people.
Thank you, Carl.
Anytime.
I'm going to give it the 4th station. Jesus meets his mother, because Colton did say in the epilogue that Mary, Mother of God, is in heaven, which is nice.
I am going to give this 2 Chronicles of Narnia references.
How did we not bring that up during the cast?
I thought for sure we would, but our Bible Boys extended universe is getting more and more robust by the day, and I have to say 2 out of 5 Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe references.
God, I'm gonna make a Charlie Day, Pepe Sylvia fucking board behind me with red twine. It's all connected,
Excellent.
Man.
The Bible verse is all coming together.
Do we want to talk about our pick for next week, or do you want to go for the book we want to read for next month?
We can talk book off cast.
Okay, then let's do... What are we doing next month? Or week, sorry.
I believe it's my turn. I have a pretty safe one I've been sitting on. I want to watch Hail Satan, ?
Yay! I love this documentary!
It is a Hulu documentary. It is very, very good. And it is our first conversation about Satanism, I believe.
How is that true, given that I'm on this podcast?
We've talked about, demons, but not Satan specifically.
Well, this one does cover Baphomet mostly.
Baphomet cast.
Okay, good.
Baphomet
All right.
boys!
I'm looking at the theatrical release poster, and it is the Statue of Liberty with Satan's head, so that's fun.
We definitely are naming the next episode Baphomet Boys, and we're going to have, a minor key version of the opening, right?
Depends on who edits it, I suppose.
Yeah, that one is very up to editor's choice.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh, Lord. All right. Well, when you're not talking about weird religious stuff on this podcast, where can people find you all on the internet?
I am at Green History on Twitter.
I'm at Michael's Diamonds on Twitter.
I'm at AaronSXL on Twitter. You can also listen to the other podcasts I do at Mortified Pod. Me and Layla are also celebrating our 1-year podcast anniversary soon. And we're going to be talking about the Netflix anime Brand New Animal, so that'll be pretty neat. Check that out. Yeah, I had a fun time. I'm glad that we got to read this book, gentlemen. And as we wipe away the tears of joy from learning that Jesus loves us very much, just remember that it is okay to cry, because even Jesus wept. We'll see you all next time.